CHA's Truth Seeker podcast on CHA's YouTube channel at Consulting the number 4 Heightened Awareness Truth Seeker podcast. Yes. All right, we're going to talk about it. And ANS stands for Autonomic Nervous System, the very target for traumatization. So, because it is our inner child. So we're going to cover some recap that I have talked about regarding the autonomic nervous system previously, because it ties right into how God revealed to me that our ANS is really a lot like an electrical system. And I've got a little backstory to share with you all about how God revealed that to me with my electric cooler that I have. And it's really cool because I said, okay, I understand now. Because that electrical system, I had to read the book. I had to read the owner's manual that came with it to learn more about why it was acting the way it was acting. And I learned that balance and sensors, that matters. So when you think about sensors with an actual electrical device, then, or appliance, if you will, then you think about your autonomic nervous system, the ANS, and how it's dependent on our 5 senses. Aha. So, before we start diving into all that, I'm going to go ahead and do our usual engineering work here. Yes. Do our engineering. That's right. That's right. Because we've got to check some stuff out here. Just to make sure you all... There we go. All right. Okay. And I've got the chat up over here. So if you've got any question, do not hesitate to reach out. And also, let me go ahead and... let me go ahead and get this out of the way, because I have noticed a tech glitch of sorts, if you will, that sometimes when I end the live stream, a screen pops up and lets me know like how many views there were, how many subscribers, how many chats. Sometimes it'll tell me that there's 2 chats in there, but I never saw the chat during the live. So what I highly encourage y'all to do is, if you are leaving something in the chat during the live and I don't address it or I don't see it because it's not showing up for me, please copy and paste and put that in the comments on the replay so I can address it and take care of it, because I don't want y'all to be left hanging if you got questions or if you need clarification on something. So I am Michelle Dickey, your host for CHA's Truth Seeker podcast, right here on CHA's YouTube channel. Again, at Consulting the number 4 Heightened Awareness. And so let's get comfortable, because how God revealed to me that our ANS, that's the autonomic nervous system, that is our inner child. And how God revealed to me, it's like an electrical system. And it makes sense because, see, what I had to do in my master's program is I had to study the metabolic processes of toxic substances, okay? And that includes psychoactive drugs, that includes other drugs, that includes, bath salts, metal toxicity. I had to study that. So that's how come I know radio frequency poisoning and metal toxicity, the side effects are the same. I mean, that's not a coincidence. Because when you look at the periodic table, all those metals are salts. Sodium is a metal. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, it doesn't take long to make that connection. So, what I had to learn about was the nerves and how they... Well, and then, of course, like, the blood-brain barrier, meaning the protector created by God to prevent certain things from getting to the brain, certain substances. Now, we know that aluminum crosses, that metal salt crosses the blood-brain barrier very easily. And, well, I've also learned that metal salts, okay, are not lipid soluble, meaning they will hang out in fatty tissue. So, that being said, whenever I cook animal meat, I make sure that I cook it thoroughly, obviously, but that I trim some of the excess fat where possible, unless I know I need some for cognitive functioning and for my joints. Now, that being said, that also feeds the autonomic nervous system. And when you think about salts and metal is a conductor for heat. When you think of electricity, think of all the heat that is generated by electrical systems. For those of you who have ever had the experience of walking through or working in a boiler room, like yours truly, well, okay, thank you, Melissa. We're doing well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so it's your birthday. All right. Well, for those of you who still celebrate, happy birthday. I don't celebrate mine anymore, but there you go. But I think the older we get, it's just another day. It's just another day. All right, but thank you also for hitting that thumbs up. And when you have had the experience of being inside a boiler room, you're welcome. You're welcome. Inside a boiler room, it's very hot because there's a lot of electrical stuff and hot water and all of that going on in a boiler room. So it's very, very stuffy. And I was like, okay, this is why our ANS, it does not like extreme temperature changes, because it will throw our senses, our 5 senses, off balance. I'm going to get to the backstory, how God connected that, because I said it makes sense as I was studying in my master's program that the nerves, okay, how you have one nerve, okay, this is a nerve, and then this is a nerve, right? This nerve ends where this one begins. In between these two is called, that space right there, it's called a synapse. And that is where the exchange, okay, of things occur, like calcium, potassium, okay, and other receptors known as the GABA. Y'all can look it up. I'm not going to get too technical with y'all, okay? But it's just a little synapse in between all of the nerve ending and beginning to the next nerve. And the ANS does that all through the body, through every muscle in the body, including the tongue. So, with our ANS being highly dependent on our 5 senses, that is touch, taste, sound, smell, sight. Okay? So, those 5 senses, the ANS needs them to be operating in balance and to be functioning properly. Have you ever tried to pull clothes out of the dryer and you couldn't tell whether it was dry or still damp? It felt like it was damp, but you could swear it was dry at the same time. Well, that's because your sense of touch, okay, was out of balance. Yeah, your sense of touch was out of balance. So, it was difficult to tell if it was dry or damp because you were kind of feeling a little bit of both. Because if your sense of touch was in balance and operating properly, you wouldn't have had that issue. You would have known immediately, okay, it's dry. So it's like causing you to second guess what you're touching. So think about the trauma, right? Traumatization, how the gaslighting from a narcissist used to trick us into second guessing our memory. Okay, now you see why the ANS is a target for this traumatization. Because it too can be thrown off balance like that. So you're second guessing whether or not your sense of touch. You're not sure. And that would be the cause of excess salt hanging out in the hands. Yes. That salt, that metal salts. And so the internal temperature there in your hand higher than it should be because of the excessive salt hanging out. So that messes up your sense of touch. It throws your sense off balance. Now, how God revealed that to me through my electric cooler was it was acting up. That's the best term I can come up with. Okay? The sensor ended up getting frozen somehow. And I was like, now how did that happen? Think about our senses for the ANS, and then on an actual electrical appliance, a sensor for temperature control. Well, I had to get the owner's manual out. And in it, it says not to lean it. Well, there for a little while, on one of the campsites, the bench that I had it on was not exactly level. And so it was tilted just a little bit. Apparently that was just enough to throw the sensor off balance. I said, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, of course. So by throwing the sensor off balance, it became inverted, meaning the fridge side was starting to act like the freezer side. And I said, okay. So what I did was I had to get it sit up straight. I had to reset it by unplugging it for several minutes and basically giving it a reset, but I had to let that sensor thaw out. So we did. And on this new site is when I discovered that. But it was like that from the previous site. And I said, okay, I got this. Now, one bench, this one, is more level than the other side. So I had to move the appliance to the other side where it's more level. And I said, okay, that makes a lot of sense that the sensor was off balance. And so it threw the actual mechanism, if you will, it threw it off balance. Same concept applies to our ANS when it is being manipulated with radio frequency. And if our body had too much salt on the inside, then it throws off our senses. This is why excess salt, and this is coming from my master's program, y'all. Okay, excess salt will cause one of the negative side effects. Well, all side effects are negative, so there you go. One of the side effects of excess salt is hallucination, and that would be sight and sound. Yep. So your sight and your sound senses become off balance when there's excess salt inside the body, throwing off your peripheral vision. Remember, it's through your peripheral vision that the devil tried to get to your subconscious mind. Your peripheral vision is the doorway to your subconscious mind. This is why you start to notice, for those who haven't yet, pay attention. There's a lot of inconsistencies out here in the matrix. And one of the biggest inconsistencies that I came to know within hotel room is the lighting. The high and the low LEDs, okay, together in one room, it will cause your eyes to strain. It will cause eye strain. That's manipulating your peripheral vision. Because when you can see properly out your peripheral vision, then your ANS can make proper association as to whether something is a threat or not. Remember, your ANS is your threat detector. And in order for it to correctly interpret something as a threat, your 5 senses, like my electrical cooler sensor, needs to be in balance. So there's a lot of things out here that are designed to keep our 5 senses off balance. And it's through excessive heat that slows down circulation. Think about, okay, I don't know anybody this has not happened to, but okay. Let's say you are using the bathroom and you have sat on the toilet maybe a little bit too long and you feel your leg, right, they went a little bit numb. Okay, so then you get up and you start walking and it starts to tingle, almost like a tickle as the circulation starts to return. Okay, well that makes me think of an electrical shock. Because yours truly, when I was a kid, I didn't know any better with them electrical fences now. I learned real quick. Don't put a metal pole through that. Oh, no. So I remember that sensation. I remember what that feels like. Oh, my gosh. My ANS remembers. Oh, my goodness. Well, because there were cows on the other side, and I wanted to pet them. Okay. That I was a kid, but I remember going home. That was a feeling that you don't forget that. If you've ever been electrocuted like that, you don't forget. So yeah, the fence was on. So I was like, okay, and I didn't mess with electrical fences anymore after that. I was like, oh. Well, I didn't know that was an electrical fence at the time. But I learned real quick. So with that being said, I recognized that sensation. And so when your circulation starts to return, starts to tickle a little bit, that's what it reminds me of, is a mild form of an electrical shock. And that's your nerves and your circulation returning to normal. And it takes a few minutes. So that being said, our ANS is the human body's electrical system. When you think about all the metal salts that gotta travel between all the synapses for every single nerve ending to nerve beginning, all those synapses all through, and that's how the nervous system communicates. That's how it communicates. It's also how it communicates with your amygdala, or amygdalae, if you will, because there's 2 ovals right back here. And when traumatized, this comes from the trauma specialist training as well, but when traumatized, the amygdala is enlarged. If you are traumatized. If the ANS is traumatized, not so much. You have to also be traumatized in order for that to occur. But if your ANS is traumatized, it will throw your senses off balance. And if your senses remain off balance long enough, it will continue to misinterpret things as a threat that are not a threat. And so ANS awareness is very important to help the inner child heal once and for all. Because God revealed to me that throughout our lives, our autonomic nervous system had been re-traumatized over and over again by all that abuse. And I said, my goodness, no wonder when you think about you get out of the narcissistic abuse situation and you finally get to where you can start healing from that trauma, and you want to sleep a lot. The body needs a lot of rest. Oh, let me tell you something. That's your ANS talking. That's your inner child saying, I need a long nap. The inner child says, I need a nap. Because that's a lot of manipulation with not just, oh my goodness, the head games, that constant push-pull with dopamine and norepinephrine, love bomb deval, and then remember the devil loves his double whammies. So while you've got that going on, you also have radio frequency manipulation of your ANS going on. I'm like, man, every time we turn around, it's like we couldn't get away from any kind of traumatization. But see, now, with the heightened awareness, we put an end to it. Put an end to it. Glory be to God. And once we do that, then we can help the ANS get back in balance. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, you got to cool it down. It got overheated. See, when the ANS gets overheated, it slows down. Circulation slows down. And when circulation slows down, what happens? That's right. Your body's not going to get the nutrients that it needs. Your body's not going to get what it needs oxygen-wise either. So, that being said, I know that the monitoring spirit hangs around long enough to see if my speech messes up at some point. I'm fully aware of that. Because what that does, that tells the monitoring spirit that I might still have some tension going on. We're working on that. Okay, we're working on that. We've been ice packing. So that's why I'm giving y'all that tip as far as helping your senses get back on balance. You got to cool it down. You got to cool that ANS down. You got to cool down that electrical system. And so, ice pack on the inside and then ice pack on the outside, especially the thyroid area. Okay? Dr. Mary Beth from TikTok. She can back it up. In fact, she's the one that I came across that confirmed what I already knew about putting ice right there at the thyroid area to help regulate your nervous system. You got to cool it off. So that'll help the senses get back into balance. Yep. And as you detox, there's the second tip for helping your ANS get back into balance. Their senses is to detox. Start allowing the body to get rid of any excess salts. And how do you do that? You reduce your sodium intake. The Patreon membership channel is listed below. And you will find the low sodium guide in our Patreon shop. Help yourself. Okay? For that one low price, you get a lot of value. Save those guides because that's part of healthier living by healthier eating. And you will get used to the different taste. Okay? You'll get used to it. It takes time. So the third tip I have for you is to be patient. Because when you are healing your inner child, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. And your inner child is responsible for a lot of biological functions. From breathing to digestion to, oh my goodness, the vagus nerve, how much urinary output it gets rid of. And you really, you want to detox, ice pack, and be patient. Now, if you do experience something severe enough to have it looked at, please have it looked at. I'm talking about in general here. For detoxing and getting your ANS healed. so that your senses get back into balance. Because I can tell you from experience that when there's too much salt being trapped in the body, and I realized that up in here, I had a lot of salt trapped. And so we've been working on getting rid of that and detoxing big time. The thyroid area, oh yeah, detoxing big time. And helping our body finally get rid of all that excess salt water that's been hanging out, so that our senses will get back into balance. And so that's that, because the more balance you have, God is the God of balance, the more balance you have regarding the ANS, the more it can relax, and the more it relaxes, the faster it will heal. Oh, of course the devil and the Matrix and narcissists, they know this. They know this, but they don't want you to know it. That's too bad. God is in full control. And so, because I'm fully aware of the water retention in my face and stuff. That's what's going on. I saw that comment on the shorts where somebody made a comment about, I look like I work in smelting, blah, 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 some allergic reaction. No, it's water retention. It's water retention, and the fact that I don't put chemicals like sunblock on my face. I'll wear makeup, yes, but I don't wear foundation anymore. At least not in this season. I'm not putting foundation on because I need, there's salt. There's excess salt built up. That's what's holding the water in my face. So, yeah, I'm fully aware of it. We know. We've been knowing. Hello. All right, because my lymphatic drainage area was under a lot of salt water, and underneath that salt water was some bruising in the lymphatic drainage area. So we finally were able to see it. Yeah, glory be to God. So that's what happens when your body starts to get the oxygen that it needs to heal. There's a big tip right there. To get your senses back in balance, help that autonomic nervous system heal, you need to make sure your body is getting adequate oxygen. So, if you need to, go camping outside, and your body will thank you. I'm telling you. Because even though you'll smell some of the chemicals in the air, that's not going to have a negative impact on you. It shouldn't. Unless you have a loss of muscle mass in your sinus area. That's the only way that it might bother you. But once your muscle mass returns, your senses get in better balance, you'll notice it. You will notice it. Absolutely, 100%. And so there's that about the human electrical system, because it is your ANS, and it's very much like that. And I thought, wow, that's really intriguing. Very intriguing. And it just helps us understand more about the ANS and why it's a target for traumatization. Because the more aware of it we become, the more we know about it, the more we help it heal, the less anything out here is going to have a negative impact on it, and it won't get re-traumatized ever again. Just like when you know about the trauma bond to a narcissist, and then you know how the trauma bond is formed. CHA Academy, btbw.com, y'all. How the trauma bond is formed. In this season, at the time of this recording, in this season, how the trauma bond is formed is available to you at 50% off. So when you go to CHA Academy, btbw.com, you'll see in the box, you'll see the $87.50. That is the 50% off. That's the one-time payment. If you do the 5 monthly payments, you're going to end up paying full price. So the 50% off is only good for the one-time payment, $87.50 right there. For a limited time. Okay, so check it out, check it out, check it out. I look forward to seeing you in the community forum at CHA Academy. That wraps this one up, y'all. Sending love and light to all fellow warriors. Thank you for watching, listening, and for your continued support. Till next time, let's show some gratitude to the Heavenly Father, and you keep being you in Jesus' name. Amen.